My name is David, and the day my father died, my brother Michael wasted no time showing me exactly how little he thought of me. I still remember sitting in that attorney's office waiting for the will to be read. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from hope. I thought maybe, just maybe, my dad had seen the years I spent taking care of him. The hospital runs, the late nights, the bills I covered quietly because Michael never showed up. But when Michael walked in, smirking like he had front-row tickets to my downfall, something in my stomach twisted. The attorney started reading, and by the second paragraph, my heart sank. Everything. Dad's house, Dad's car, the savings. It all went to Michael, not one line for me. Michael leaned back, crossed his arms, and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Guess Dad finally realized who the real son was. I felt the room tilt. I felt my chest cave in, and I felt something else too, something cold and steady settling in my bones. This story, it isn't about losing. It's about what I found after. If you've ever been blindsided by your own family, stay with me. What comes next changed everything. When I walked out of that attorney's office, the sun felt too bright, almost mocking. I kept replaying the moment in my head, the smirk, the laughter, the way Michael patted my shoulder like I was some charity case who finally got cut off. I drove home on autopilot, my mind spinning between anger and disbelief. I wasn't perfect, but I had been there for Dad. I held his hand through surgeries. I handled every bill. I made sure he never felt alone, and somehow none of that meant anything. For a week I barely slept. Something about the will felt wrong, incomplete. Dad wasn't careless. He didn't forget things. He planned. Always. And then the letter. I found it tucked inside one of his old flannel jackets. It was short, written in his shaky handwriting. David, if anything happens, look in the place where work begins. I read that line over and over. It sounded like a riddle he'd make up when I was a kid, sending me on little treasure hunts around the house. But now it felt like a breadcrumb he needed me to follow. That night I went into the garage. Dad's workbench was exactly how he left it. Tools lined up perfectly, wood shavings still in a small pile, and there, under an old rag, I saw his metal toolbox. I opened it and froze. Inside, taped to the lid, was a small key, a safety deposit box key from First National Bank. My hands started shaking again. Not from hope this time, from certainty. Dad hadn't forgotten me. He'd hidden something. I barely slept that night. I just kept staring at that little silver key on my kitchen table. It felt heavier than it should have, almost like it was holding the truth I'd been denied. By morning I was running on caffeine and nerves. I drove to First National as soon as the doors opened. The lobby smelled like polished floors and old paper, the kind of place where secrets lived quietly for decades. When I handed the key to the banker, she scanned it and raised an eyebrow. This box hasn't been opened in over 12 years. 12 years, right around the time Dad first got sick. She led me into a private room, then left me alone with the metal box. My palms were sweating. My throat felt tight. For a moment, I just stared at it. I whispered, "All right, Dad, what did you want me to see?" I turned the key. The lock clicked. Inside was a thick manila envelope, sealed and marked with Dad's handwriting. For David, only David. My chest tightened. I sat down and opened it carefully, afraid the paper might tear. There were 3 things inside: a handwritten letter, a stack of property documents, and a legal trust agreement with a gold notary seal. My hands shook as I lifted the letter first. "Son, I know how your brother is. I know what he'll do when I'm gone, so listen carefully. The will you'll hear isn't the whole story. It's only the surface. What truly matters is the trust, the assets no one knows I own, and every one of them is yours." I felt my breath catch. I had to put the letter down just to steady myself. Dad continued, "Let Michael have the things that shine. The cars, the house, the bank accounts. He'll burn through them fast. But you'll control the ground he walks on, the roof over his head, and the income that keeps him afloat. Quiet power is real power, David." "Quiet power!" That line echoed in my bones. I pulled the trust document out next. It listed multiple duplexes, 3 small commercial buildings, and 2 rental homes Dad had bought over the years. Properties I never even knew he had. And the trust named me alone, as the beneficiary and successor trustee, which meant one thing. Everything Michael depended on financially already belonged to me. And he had no idea. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling as the shock slowly melted into something steadier, something calmer, something almost frightening. Control. Dad had given me control. I didn't know it then. But this was the moment everything, my brother, our family, our future, began to shift. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my truck in the bank parking lot, holding that trust agreement like it was a live wire. Every line I read made my pulse heavier. Dad hadn't just left me something. He'd built an entire safety net and placed me at the center of it. For years, Michael had lived off mysterious family resources. He always bragged about how lucky we were that Dad had made smart investments. I used to think he was exaggerating. Turns out the only part he got right was Dad's intelligence. The rest? He never knew the truth behind any of it. As I flipped through the documents again, something caught my eye. One of the commercial buildings listed, the one Michael's auto shop rented space in, was fully owned by the trust, meaning Dad, meaning now, me. A slow, steady breath left my chest. Michael wasn't just standing on Dad's legacy. He was standing on mine. When I finally drove home, the exhaustion hit me all at once. My mind kept bouncing between anger, gratitude, and something sharper, anticipation. For the first time since the will reading, I felt grounded, steady, like the floor under me finally stopped cracking. That night, I spread everything across my kitchen table. The trust documents, the deed copies, the rent roll sheets. I started reading every line, every footnote. I was afraid to miss anything, afraid there might be a loophole or a catch. But Dad had made sure there wasn't. The trust was airtight, professionally structured, reviewed annually. The assets were all legally protected and I was the sole beneficiary. Michael wasn't mentioned anywhere. Not once. I sat back in my chair, hands on my face, trying to process the layers of what this meant. Dad wasn't just giving me something, he was giving me a shield. And maybe a weapon. Not for revenge. Not immediately anyway. But to protect myself from the storm he knew would come. I didn't have to wait long for confirmation. The very next morning Michael called, not to check on me, not to see how I was handling the will. No, he called to gloat. Well, he said, his voice dripping with that smug tone he'd perfected, guess you know where Dad's priorities were. I stayed quiet. I didn't trust myself to speak without my voice cracking. Michael kept going. I'm moving into Dad's place this week, gonna fix it up the way it should have been. And hey, if you're feeling weird about everything, I get it. Not everyone gets to be the chosen one. Chosen one. The irony of that line almost made me laugh. But I didn't. I just let him talk. Let him enjoy his moment. Because soon, he'd learn the truth. And that truth would hit with the weight of a collapsing building. After he hung up, I spent the rest of the day preparing. I scheduled a meeting with the trust attorney listed in the documents. Her name was Ms. Aldridge, and when she walked into her office conference room, she shook my hand firmly. Your father spoke highly of you, she said. He updated this trust more than most clients. He wanted it perfected before he died. She sat across from me and opened her folder. I imagine your brother handled the will reading. I nodded. And I imagine you're here because what you heard didn't match what you expected. I let out a shaky breath. No, it didn't. She pushed a set of papers toward me. Mr. Whitaker, your father anticipated that reaction. He instructed me to release everything in the trust only to you and only after his passing. He believed you were the more responsible of the two. That sentence, it didn't puff me up. It didn't make me feel superior. It hurt. Because it meant Dad had understood exactly who Michael was and exactly how he'd treat me, even at the very end. Ms. Aldridge explained everything clearly, every step, every right I now had, every responsibility, every legal boundary Michael couldn't cross even if he tried. By the time I walked out of her office, I wasn't confused anymore. I was prepared. The next week was a quiet storm. I updated the trust accounts, contacted the property managers, and introduced myself as the new trustee. Most of them already knew my father well, and they welcomed the transition like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then on Thursday, the first shift happened. Michael called again. This time he wasn't gloating. He was angry. "Hey," he snapped. "What's this notice about rent adjustments at the shop? The landlord can't just pull this kind of crap." I swallowed the urge to answer immediately. I waited a beat, letting the silence do the work for me. "Rent adjustments?" I said slowly. "When did you get that?" "This morning," he shot back. "It's insane. The new guy is trying to take advantage. I swear Dad would have never—" I almost said it. I almost told him. But something in me wanted to wait, to let reality land with maximum clarity, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in truth. "I'm sure whoever owns it now has their reasons," I said carefully. "Maybe you should talk to them directly." "Yeah," he grumbled. "I will." He didn't know it yet, but he already had. Over the next few days, more notices went out. Not cruel ones, not punitive, just standard legal updates the trust required. But to Michael, they felt like the walls were closing in, and I could feel the moment approaching, the moment the truth would crack open the life he thought he controlled. Every document, every signature, every step Dad had set in place was guiding both of us toward it, and when the reveal finally came, it wouldn't just shift our family dynamic, it would break it wide open. The reveal came sooner than I expected, and in a way I couldn't have scripted better if I tried. It was a Monday morning. I was making coffee, trying to convince myself I could still live a normal life while holding the kind of power Dad had handed me. Then my phone buzzed. Not a call, a barrage of notifications. 3 missed calls from Michael, 2 angry voicemails, and a text that just said, "Call me now." I didn't rush. I finished pouring my coffee, let the steam settle, then tapped the call button. He answered before it even rang once. "David," he snapped, "what the hell is going on?" I kept my voice level. "Morning to you too." "No, don't do that. Don't act calm. I just got a notice from the bank saying the building owner froze the automatic withdrawal for the shop lease. They're demanding direct payment now, and his voice cracked with anger. "They said the owner changed." There it was, the first hard collision with the truth. I walked to the window, watching the neighborhood come alive. The world looked normal, quiet. But my life, our lives, were shifting like tectonic plates. "Michael," I said slowly, "maybe talk to the owner. Maybe he can explain." "I tried," he shouted. "They said the owner is the trustee, but they won't give me the name. They said I'll find out in the formal notice." "That's standard," I replied gently. "Trusts are private." He scoffed. "Trusts? What trust? Dad didn't have a trust, and if he did, I'd know about it." The second irony of the month. I didn't say anything at first. I let that silence hang in the air like a loaded verdict. Then, very calmly, I said, "Michael, did you ever wonder where Dad's investment income came from? Or how he paid for those medical bills without touching the savings account you inherited?" He hesitated, just for half a second. But that pause said everything. "Don't start with your theories," he muttered. "Dad gave me everything because I was the responsible one, not you." Responsible. That word used to hurt, but not anymore. I exhaled slowly. "Michael, check your mail this afternoon." He cursed under his breath. "What's coming?" "A notice," I said. "Something Dad wanted you to see." "What notice?" "The truth." He hung up on me. I didn't blame him. The storm had started, and he was still pretending it was a breeze. That afternoon, everything cracked open. I got another call from him, this one frantic.
"David, what is this? What the hell is this?"
His voice wasn't angry anymore, it was scared. I spoke softly. "I think you already know." No, I don't. This paper says the building, the shop, the rental properties, they're all part of some trust Dad set up. And the trustee, the successor trustee." His breathing was uneven. "It says your name. It says everything goes through you." I closed my eyes, letting the truth settle between us like dust after an explosion. "Yes," I said quietly, "it does." There was silence on the other end. Not shocked silence, not angry silence. A different kind of silence. The kind where a person watches their entire worldview collapse. "You're lying," he finally whispered. "You have to be lying." "I'm not," I said. "Dad set it up 12 years ago. He hid it because he knew you'd try to fight it. He gave you the shiny things, the things he knew you'd want, but he trusted me with the things that mattered. You think you're better than me? Michael shouted suddenly. Is that it? No, I said. I think Dad knew us, both of us, more than we realized. He let out a sound, half laugh, half choke. So what now? You get to control me? Control everything? I didn't answer right away. I let him breathe. I let him feel every inch of the reality he'd ignored for years. Michael, I said finally, I didn't do this. Dad did. He wanted you to stand on your own, and he wanted me to have the means to protect what he built. But raising my rent? He demanded. Freezing the auto pay? Is that protection? It's regulation, I said calmly. The trust requires updated leases under my name. It's not personal. It's standard procedure. He didn't believe that entirely. I could hear it in the way he exhaled sharply. You planned this, he muttered. You waited for Dad to die. Those words hit harder than I expected. I stepped back from the window, feeling something hot rise in my chest. Don't you ever say that again, I said quietly. I would have given anything, just to have one more day with him. You know that. He didn't respond. Michael, I continued, I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to manage what Dad asked me to manage, that's all. That's all, he repeated bitterly. So what happens to my shop? That depends on you, I said. You can keep it, you can stay, but the lease has to follow the trust's terms. He went silent for a long time. Then finally, in a small, defeated voice, he said, So you're my landlord? I swallowed hard. Yes, I whispered. I am. I expected rage. I expected screaming, but he didn't do either. He just hung up. No words, no anger, just the sound of a man realizing his power, his comfort, his kingdom had never been his at all. That night I sat at my table again, looking at the trust, thinking about Dad, thinking about Michael, thinking about how everything had flipped without me ever raising a hand. But this wasn't over. Not even close. The real confrontation, the one that would finally break us open, was still ahead. And I could feel it coming. The confrontation didn't happen for 3 days. 3 days of silence from Michael. 3 days of me checking my phone a little too often. 3 days of wondering if Dad ever imagined things would unfold like this. On the 4th day, I heard a knock on my door. Not angry, not rushed, just hollow. I opened it to find Michael standing there. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just stripped of that loud armor he usually wore. His eyes weren't sharp. They were tired. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped aside and motioned him in. He didn't walk far, just a few steps into the living room before stopping, like he wasn't sure he belonged there. He didn't sit. I didn't either. For a few seconds, we stood in silence. Two brothers. Two grown men whose entire childhood had twisted into something complicated and cracked. Michael finally spoke. I read all the documents, he said quietly. Every page, every signature. I had a lawyer look at them too. His voice dropped. It's real. All of it. I nodded. Dad wanted it that way. He shook his head slowly, disbelief still clinging to him. He trusted you with so much, and me with so little. He didn't give you little, I said softly. He just gave us different things. Michael pressed his hands to his face. I don't understand why he didn't tell me, why he didn't prepare me, why he just left everything this way. I took a breath. Because if he told you, you would have fought him. You would have tried to take it, or control it, or twist it into something that looked better on paper. His hands dropped, his eyes locked on mine. You think that little of me? I didn't flinch. I think Dad knew you, and I think you know what he would have been afraid of. Michael tried to look away, but couldn't. Something in my tone, or maybe his own conscience, kept him still. I thought I was the favorite, he whispered. I really did. You were, I said gently. For a long time. Dad loved you. He loved us both. But loving someone doesn't mean trusting them with everything. He blinked hard, like he was absorbing a blow he didn't expect. Finally, he asked the question he'd been avoiding. So what happens now? You're my landlord. My shop's landlord, the owner of half the things I rely on. What does that mean for me? I let out a long, controlled breath. It means we're going to do this right, I said. Leases, agreements, expectations, nothing shady, nothing cruel, but no shortcuts and no special treatment either. He swallowed. So you're not kicking me out? I'm not here to destroy you, I said, but I'm not here to let you walk over me anymore either. His eyes softened, barely, but enough to see it. You really could have crushed me, he murmured. You still could. I'm not interested in crushing you. Then what do you want? I paused, and for the first time in weeks, I let the truth spill out. I want a brother who doesn't see me as competition, or a backup plan, or someone he can dismiss whenever he feels like it. I want respect, real respect. Not because Dad told you to give it, because you finally understand who I am. Michael looked down at his shoes, like the weight of that landing was almost too heavy to carry. I don't know how to be that, he admitted. You can learn. He nodded slowly. And you? What do you need from me right now? Start with honesty, I said. Tell me what you're actually afraid of. It took him a long time to speak, but when he did, the truth came out in a voice that barely held together. I'm afraid that without Dad, I'm nothing. He always bailed me out. Always. And when he didn't put me in the trust, I realized maybe he knew I couldn't stand on my own. I stepped forward just a little. You can, I said, but not if you pretend you're invincible. Michael's breath shook. So, we work together? We start there, I said. Working, respecting, not manipulating, and the rest, we figure it out. For the first time in years, Michael gave me a genuine nod. Small, uncertain, but real. He headed toward the door, paused, and said, Dad trusted you with the hard things. I get that now, maybe. Maybe I should too. He left before I could respond. The door clicked shut, and for a long moment, I just stood there, feeling the quiet settle around me. It wasn't victory, not the kind you celebrate. It was something deeper. Closure, foundation, rebalancing. Dad didn't give me a sword. He gave me leverage. He gave me strength. He gave me the ability to choose who I wanted to be in the aftermath. And I chose calm. I chose boundaries. I chose a future where Michael had to grow, or live with the consequences of not doing it. As I folded the trust documents later that night, placing them back into the envelope, I found myself whispering, Thanks, Dad. I get it now. And I meant every word. If you're listening to this and someone in your life has written you off or underestimated you, don't think for a second that means your story is over. Sometimes the quiet ones, the steady ones, the ones nobody sees coming, are holding the real power. And if you want more stories where betrayal flips, truth rises, and justice comes quietly before it comes loudly, make sure you stay with us. Your support keeps these stories alive. And if you're ready, the next video dives into how my cousin tried forging a life insurance policy in my name. Trust me, you'll want to hear that one.